Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be reading some Plato. The Charmides is what we're going to be reading. We arrived back yesterday evening from a camp at Podea, and as I was returning after a long absence, I was delighted to go to my familiar haunts. I went especially to the wrestling school of Tyreus, to the one opposite the Queen's Shrine, and I came across a lot of people there, most of whom were familiar to me. But there were also some who I did not know. When they saw me coming in so unexpectedly, they immediately greeted me from all sides. And Chaerephon, being the mad person he is, jumped in their midst, ran towards me, took me by the hand, and said, "Socrates, how did you survive the battle?" A little before we left, there had been a battle at Podea, which the people here had just heard about. And in reply to him, I said, "Like this, just as you see me." Well, it was reported here that there had been an extremely fierce battle in which many people we know had died. And for most part, that report is true, I said. "Were you actually there in battle?" he asked. "I was there." "Then sit down here," he said, "and tell us about it, for we have not yet found out all the details with any clarity." And as he spoke, he led me over and seated me beside Critias, the son of Callichorus. So I sat beside him, greeted Critias and the others, and then gave them a full account of the news from the camp, answering the various questions that each of them asked. Once we had enough of such stories, I, in turn, questioned them about the state of affairs here, about the status of philosophy, and about the young people, and whether any of them had proved to be especially notable for wisdom or beauty, or both. Critias glanced over at the door and saw some young men coming in engaged in mutual banter. Another group followed behind. So there's just some footnotes here that we might want to read. So first, Podea was a colony in northern Greece established by the Corinthians. It was the site of the famous battle during the Peloponnesian War. Chaerephon was Socrates' close friend, who famously asked the oracle at Delphi whether there was anyone wiser than Socrates. He appears in a number of Plato's dialogues. Critias was of Athenian political life. He was the first cousin of Plato's mother and eventually became a member of the 30 tyrants who assumed power in Athens after its defeat to Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. Among the 30, Critias was noted for his violence. "Okay, then sit down here," said he, "and tell us about it, for we have not yet found out all the details with any clarity." And as he spoke, he led me over and seated me beside Critias, the son of Calarius. So I sat beside him, greeted Critias and the others, and then gave them a full account of the news from the camp, answering the various questions that each of them asked. Once we had enough of such stories, I, in turn, questioned them about the state of affairs here, about the status of philosophy, and about the young people, and whether any of them proved to be especially notable for wisdom or beauty, or both. Critias glanced over at the door and saw some young men come in engaged in mutual banter, and another group followed behind. "Socrates," he said, "as far as the beautiful ones are concerned, I think you will get your answers straight away. Yes, those fellows who are coming in at the moment are leading the way, and they are lovers of the fellow who is regarded nowadays, at any rate, as the most beautiful of them all. And it looks to me as if he, the lad himself, is already nearby." "Who is he?" I asked. "And whose son is he?" "I presume you know him," he replied, "although he was not yet of age before you went away. He is Charmides, the son of Glaucon, my uncle. So he is my cousin." "I know him, indeed, by Zeus, since he was remarkable even when he was still a boy, and I presume at this stage he is already quite a fine young man. You will know soon enough how grown up he is and what he is like. And as he was saying all this, Charmides entered. Now, my friend, do not use me as the measure, for I am a white line on a white surface when it comes to beautiful people, since almost anyone who has come of age looks beautiful to me. Nevertheless, at that moment, the young man looked amazed to me in stature and in beauty, and all others seemed to be in love with him. They were so astounded and excited when he entered, and there were lots of more lovers following behind too. Now, for men of our age, this response was no great surprise, but I also paid attention to the young boys, and not one of them, not even the smallest of them, so much as glanced at anyone else. No, they all looked at him as though he were a statue. And Chaerephon called out to me, Socrates, how does this young man look to you? Isn't he fair of face? Exceedingly so, I said. Yet if this fellow were willing to strip, said he, you would think he had no face, so utterly beautiful is his physique. Now all the others said the same thing as Chaerephon, and I said, by Hercules, what an indomitable man you are describing, if he happens to possess one additional quality, a minor one. What? Asked Critias. If he happens to have a well-developed soul, said I, and since he belongs to your family, Critias, that is the sort of person he should presumably be. Yes, he said. He is very noble and good in that sense too. Well, why don't we strip this particular part of him and look at that before we look at his body? For I am quite sure that he is now at an age when he is willing to engage in discourse. Very much so, said Critias. And mark my words, he is also a lover of wisdom, and in the opinion of others and of himself, quite a poet. This, Critias, my friend, is a beauty that belongs in your family from the past through your ancestral connection with Solon. But why don't you call the young man over and show him to me? Presumably, even if he happened to be younger still, it would not embarrass him to converse with us in your presence, you who are both his guardian and his cousin. Yes, that's a good suggestion, Socrates. We will call him. And with that he said to his attendant, Boy, call Charmides and say that I want to introduce him to a physician in relation to that ailment he told me he was suffering from yesterday. Then Critias turned to me and explained. In fact, he said recently that he has a headache when he gets up in the morning. So what is to stop you from pretending to him that you know a remedy for a headache? Nothing. Just get him to come over. Oh, he will come. Well, that is what actually happened. Indeed, he arrived and caused a great deal of laughter. For in order to make room for Charmides to sit beside him, each of us who were already seated pushed eagerly against his neighbour until the fellow seated at one end had to stand up, and we knocked the fellow at the other end off, sideways. Then Charmides came and sat between myself and Critias. There and then, my friend, I was already at a loss, and my former confidence was knocked out of me, the confidence that I could converse with him quite easily. But when Critias was explaining that I was the one who knew the remedy, the lad looked into my eyes in a manner that defies description, sat up as if to ask me a question, and everyone in the palestra surged around us in a circle. Then indeed, my noble friend, I beheld the inside of his garment, and I was inflamed, and was no longer in myself, and I decided that when it came to love, Sidious was the most wisest poet. When speaking of a beautiful boy, he advised someone that the fawn should be careful when he arrives in front of a lion, lest he be seized as a piece of meat. Indeed, I thought that I myself had been captured by a creature of this sort. Nevertheless, When he asked if I knew the remedy for the headache, I somehow replied with difficulty that I knew it. Well, what is it? He asked. And I replied that it was a certain leaf. But in addition to the remedy, there was also a certain incantation. And if a person were to chant this at the same time as he used the remedy would make him completely healthy. But without the incantation, the leaf would be of no benefit. Then I will write down the incantation. Call it out. Shall I do it only if you persuade me? Said I, or even if you do not? So he laughed and said, if I persuade you, Socrates. So be it, said I. And you are certain of my name? Unless I am doing you wrong, said he. For amongst my own age group, you are talked about quite a lot, and I also remember you associating with Critias here, even when I was a child. Well done, said I. Yes, I shall speak more openly to you about the kind of incantation it happens to be. I was at a loss just now as to how I might show you its power, Charmides. For this sort of incantation is unable to make the head alone healthy. Rather, just as you may already have heard from the good physicians, whenever someone comes to them with sore eyes, they say somehow they cannot attempt to treat the eyes on their own. But it would also be necessary to treat the head at the same time, if the eyes are to be in good condition. And what is more, it is highly irrational to think the head could ever be treated just by itself without treating the whole body. So based on this principle, they endeavor to treat and cure the part, along with the whole, by regimes applicable to the entire body. Aren't you aware that this is what they say, and that this is how matters stand? Entirely so. In that case, do you think I'm expressing this well? And do you accept the principle without reservation? When I heard his approval, I recovered my confidence with courage, gradually revived once more, and my spirit was rekindled. I said, well, that is the sort of incantation that this is, Charmides. I learned it up there on campaign from one of the Thracian physicians of Zamalos, who are also said to confer immortality. The Thracian said the Greek physician who say what I just told you are right to say so. But Zalmox, our king, who is a god, says that just as one should not attempt to cure eyes without head, or head without body, so one should not attempt to cure body without curing soul. So this is the reason why so many diseases evade the Greek physicians. It is because they disregard the whole, which needs to be cared for. The whole needs to be cared for. Because if the whole is not in good condition, it is impossible for part to be well. For, said he, everything comes forth from the soul. But what is good and what is bad for the body and for the entire person, these flow from there, just as they flow from head to eyes. So it is necessary to treat that the first and foremost, if any part of the head or the rest of the body is to be in a good condition. And, he said, blessed man, the soul is treated with certain incantations, and these incantations are beautiful words. From such words as these, sound-mindedness is engendered in our souls, and once it has been engendered and is present, it is easy at that stage to provide health to the head and to the rest of the body, too. So when teaching me about the remedy and the incantations, he said, let no one who has not first submitted his soul to be treated by you with the incantations, persuade you to treat his head. And indeed, said he, this is the mistake some physicians make in treating people nowadays. They endeavor to be physicians of sound-mindedness and of bodily health separately, and he commanded me, quite forcibly, to allow no one, no matter how wealthy, well-born, or handsome he might be, to persuade me to do otherwise. So, since I have sworn an oath, and it is necessary that I obey it, I shall obey it. As for you, if you wish to follow the orders of the stranger, and first submit your soul to be enchanted by Thracian charms, I shall then apply the leaf to your head. If not, we do not know what we should do with you, dear Charmides. Now, when Critias heard me saying this, he said, this headache could turn out to be a godsend for the young man, Socrates, if he will be compelled to improve this thinking because of his head. But I tell you, Charmides is not regarded as superior to the rest of his age group for his looks alone, but also of the quality for which you claim to have the incantation. You say it is for sound-mindedness, don't you? Very much so. Well, mark my words, he said. He is regarded far and away as the most sound-minded lad there is nowadays, and in other respects he is as good as anyone else of that age. And indeed, Charmides, said I, it is only right that you should be superior to the others in all qualities of this sort. Indeed, I do not think anyone else here could so easily point to families in Athens that, united and combined, are likely to beget more noble and exalted offspring than the families you were born from. Indeed, your father's family of Critias, son of Dropides, eulogizes by Anacreon, Solon, and many other poets, has been presented to us as superior in nobility and excellence, and in anything else that counts as happiness. And the same goes for your mother's family, since it is said that no one on the continent was reputed to be more noble and influential man than your uncle Pyrilaps, when he went to embassies to the great king, or to anyone else in the continent. And this side of your family, in its entirety, is not all the inferior to the other. So, sprung from such families as these, it is likely that you are foremost in everything. Now, from what we can see of your physique, dear son of Glaucon, I do not think you have fallen below the standard of any of your forebears in any respect. And if you really are naturally endowed with enough sound-mindedness too, and the other qualities our friend here mentioned, then your mother bore a blessed son indeed, dear Charmides. So, this is how matters stand. If Critias here says sound-mindedness is already present in you, and you are sufficiently sound-minded, you no longer have need of the incantations of Zalamos or of Arbrias the Hyperborean. And you should be given the head readily. So Hyperborean, what is the Hyperborean? There's a legendary sage and priest of Apollo who endowed with the gift of prophecy. Cool. Hyperborean. But if you seem as yet to be deficient in these, you should chant the incantation before you are given the remedy. So tell me yourself whether you agree with this man. Do you claim that you already possess enough sound-mindedness, or are you deficient in this? Now, Charmides blushed at first, and appeared more beautiful, even more beautiful, since his modesty suited his years. Then he answered in a dignified manner, and said that it would not be easy in the present situation either to admit or deny what he had been asked. Indeed, said he, if I say I am not sound-minded, this is not just a strange thing to say against oneself, but at the same time, I would be proving Critias here a liar, and many others too who regard me as sound-minded because this man says so. Then again, if I say that I am sound-minded and sing my own praise, that will surely appear offensive. So I don't know how I am to answer you. So this is the question. Do you claim that you possess enough sound-mindedness, or are you deficient in this? So, and then Critias or Charmides doesn't know what to do. If I say I'm sound-minded, if I'm not sound-minded, this is proving Critias a liar, because he is saying that I have enough sound-mindedness. Then, if I say that I am sound-minded and sing my own, surely this will be offensive. So I don't know what to do. And I said, that sounds reasonable to me, Charmides, and in my opinion, we should jointly consider whether or not you have acquired what I am asking you about, so that you are not forced to say what you do not wish to say. Nor shall I, for my part, turn my hand to medical treatment without due deliberation. So if it is acceptable to you, I want to consider this along with you. If not, let us leave it. Well, said he, nothing could be more acceptable. So to that end, let's consider this in whatever manner you yourself think better. Then I said, I think our investigation into this is best concluded as follows. Indeed, it is obvious that if sound-mindedness is present in you, you are able to form some opinion about it. For once sound-mindedness is in you, if it is actually in you, it must, I presume, produce a certain awareness from which you would have some opinion about it as to what sound-mindedness is and what sort of thing that is. Don't you think? Yes, I think so. In that case, said I, since in fact you know how I speak, how to speak Greek, I am sure you could also say that this appears to you to be, perhaps. Okay. Then, said I think our investigation into this is best conducted as follows. Indeed, it is obvious that if sound-mindedness is present in you, you are able to form some opinion about it. For once sound-mindedness is in you, if it is actually in you, it must, I presume, produce a certain awareness from which you would have some opinion about it as to what sound-mindedness is and what sort of thing it is. Don't you think so? Yes. In that case, said I, since in fact you know how to speak Greek, I am sure you could also say what this appears to you to be. Well then, said I, so that we may hazard a guess as to whether sound-mindedness is in you or not, you should tell us what you say sound-mindedness is, in your opinion. Initially, he was reluctant and did not really want to answer. But then he said that in his opinion, and this is where we have the definition, and Plato is a philosopher in many ways of definition. So let's write this now. So, sound-mindedness is doing everything in orderly manner and quietly, in walking on the streets, in conversation, and doing everything else in similar fashion. And in my opinion, said he, what you are asking about is this, in short and certain quietness. So what we have is sound-mindedness, Sm equals orderly and quiet. Well now, said I, is this right? People do at any rate. People do say at any rate that those who are quiet and sound of mindedness, so let us see if they have a point. Tell me then, wouldn't you say sound mindedness is something good? Entirely so. So sound mindedness is something good. Okay. Tell me then, wouldn't you say sound mindedness is something good? Entirely so. Well, for the writing teacher, is it best to write similar letters quickly or quietly? Quickly. And what about reading? Is it good to do so quickly or quietly? Quickly. Yes, and are playing the harp quickly and wrestling nimbly better than doing so quietly and slowly? What about boxing and the pankration? Isn't the situation the same? Entirely so. In running and jumping too, and all activities of the body, aren't those that occur nimbly and quickly the good ones, while those that are done with difficulty and quietly the bad ones, apparently? Then it is apparent to us that what is best in the case of the body, at any rate, is not what is quickest and nimblest, what is quietest, but is quickest and nimblest. Entirely so. And was sound-mindedness something good? Yes. Then, in the case of the body at least, not quietness, but quickness would be more sound-mindedness. Since sound-mindedness is something good, so it seems. Okay, so here we have another definition. Definition 2. In the case in the case of body, not quietness, but quickness would be more so quick. Yep, quickness is good. So quickness is sound-mindedness. What about this? Said I. Which is better, ease of learning or difficulty in learning? Ease of learning. And does ease of learning involve learning quickly, while difficulty of learning involves quietly and slowly? Yes. And isn't it better to teach someone quickly and energetically rather than quietly and slowly? Yes. What about this? Is it better to recollect and remember quietly and slowly, or energetically and quickly? Energetically and quickly. And isn't quick-wittedness a certain nimbleness of the soul rather than quietness? True. And for the writing teacher and harp teacher, or anyone else, isn't it best to understand what is said, not as quietly as possible, but as quickly as possible? Yes. Then again, in the investigation of the soul and in deliberation, it is not the quietest person, I think, or the one who deliberates and makes discoveries with difficulty, who seems to be worthy of praise, but the one who does the most easily and quickly. So, again, easily and quickly. Therefore, Charmides, in action, whether they concern the soul or the body, do those who quickest and nimblest appear nobler to us than those who are slowest and quietest? Yeah, quite likely. So sound-mindedness would not be quietness, nor would the sound-minded life be quiet, at least on the basis of this argument. Since it must be good if it is sound-minded. And so there are two possibilities. Either there are no circumstances. Let's just write this down quick. We'll come back. And so there are two possibilities. Either there are no circumstances where quiet actions in life are better than quick and vigorous ones, or there are very few. But my friend, even if it is the case that just as many quiet actions as vigorous and quick ones happen to be good, not even on this basis would sound-mindedness consist more in acting quietly than in acting energetically and quickly, either in walking, in talking, or anything else. nor would the quiet, orderly life be more sound-mindedness with good, yet the quick actions have turned out to be no less good than the quiet ones. I think, Socrates, said he, that what you have said is correct. Then Charmides, let's just read this again. So sound-mindedness would not be quietness, nor would sound-minded life be quiet, at least on the basis of the argument, since it must be good if it is sound-minded. And so there are two possibilities. Either there are no circumstances where quiet actions in life are better than quick and vigorous ones, or there are very few. But my friend, even if it is the case that just as many quiet actions as vigorous and quick ones happen to be good, not even on the basis would sound-mindedness consist more in acting quietly than in acting energetically and quickly, either in walking, in talking, or anything else. Nor would the quiet, orderly life be more sound-minded than one that is not quiet. This is because in our argument we included sound-mindedness with the good, yet the quick actions have turned out to be no less good than the quiet ones. So that's a definition and a conclusion. And we'll come over this again. I think, Socrates, said he, that what you have said is correct. Then, Charmides, said I, once again pay even closer attention to yourself. Look into yourself, reflect upon the sort of person sound-mindedness makes you by its presence, and what it must be like in order to produce such an effect. And once you have drawn your conclusion from all this, declare nicely and courageously, what does it appear to you to be? And he paused, scrutinized himself very courageously, and said, well, it seems to me that sound-mindedness makes a person ashamed and produces modesty. And modesty is what sound-mindedness actually is. Well, didn't we agree just now that sound-mindedness is something good? Entirely so. And aren't sound-minded men also good? Yes. So could something that does not produce good men be good? Of course not. So sound-mindedness is not only noble, it is also good. Yes, I think so. What is this? Said I. Don't you believe Homer when he says modesty is not a good companion for a needy man? So again, we have, let's call it a definition, I don't know, asterisk, because he is saying modesty by definition is not. So, okay, so we'll come back to this anyway. I just want to make it at least a marker. So modesty is, it seems, both good and not good. So let's call this conditional. Because he's saying modesty is not good for some. So modesty, it seems, is both good and not good, apparently so. And yet, sound-mindedness is good if its presence really does make people good and not bad. Why, yes, I think that is how matters stand, just as you say. Then sound-mindedness would not be modest since it actually happens to be good, while modesty is no more good than bad. Well, Socrates, it seems to me that you are saying what you're saying is correct. But consider this. What do you think of the following statement about sound-mindedness? Indeed, I have just remembered hearing someone say that sound-mindedness would be doing what belongs to yourself. Now consider whether the person who said this was correct in saying so, in your opinion. You wretch, said I. You have heard this from Critias here, from someone else, who is wise. It seems he heard this from someone else at Critias, since it certainly was not from me. Socrates, what difference does it make from who I heard, said Charmides. None, I replied. For we should not really consider who said this, but whether what is being said is true or not. Okay. Interesting. Now, this is very, very interesting. Socrates calling Charmides a wretch. So this is something that I need to follow up on. Because right after this, he says, I replied, for we should really consider who said this, but whether what is being said is true or not. So Socrates has no time for forms of investigation that are connected to who the individual is who's saying. Yes, by Zeus, said I. But if we find out what it means, I would be surprised, for it seems like some sort of riddle. Why is that? Because the speaker, said I, in saying that sound-mindedness is doing what belongs to you, did not intend the words in the way that he expresses them. Or do you think the writing teacher does nothing when he writes or reads? No, you replied. I think he does something. So do you think the grammar teacher only writes and reads his own name, or teaches you boys to do this? Or did you write the names of your enemies no less than those of your friends, no less? Well, in this respect, were you being a busybody and not being sound-minded in doing so? Not at all. Okay, so next time we'll read page 11. So we're stopping on 161E. We're going to get into another very interesting argument in 161E. But for the time being, this is good. I mean, we have gone over the quietness, we've gone over the quickness, we're going over the shame. So, yeah, we'll review a lot of this stuff next time. Okay, take care.